Hi, my name is William. Today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about Plato's Republic, but first I want to do an introduction. So obviously I said my name is William. Jerem, I think, introduced me about a month ago on the channel. He had asked me to make a video, and while that video did get made, it never got put out because when I kept rewatching that video, I was really upset and disappointed with the way that I had articulated myself and like come across. I don't think my ideas really came across as very clear. I think they were very jumbled up. The structure was poor. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to put this out. I'm not going to force people, like, even like the random curious person to watch this jumbled mess, right? So I didn't. And then recently I saw Jerem. We were building a shed for his dad. And he was like, hey, um, I think you should remake that video. I think you had a lot of really good ideas in there, William. I think that you should put them on paper, and I think you should get this video out. And then we can kind of do something like Vlog Brothers, where we go back and forth talking about ideas and books that we've come to. And I was like, you know what, you're right, Jerem. I got to get that motivation and get this video out there. Um, because I don't know, I do think my thoughts are valuable, at least somewhat, but more to the point, I think it's important to look at books through like different lenses and different ideas that people come to. I think it's like foundational to like building a knowledge base about the world, which is I think something that brought me and Jerem together as like people, is our ability to really like look at the world in a rational way, but also to seek knowledge, and to find the things that we're looking for. I think we're both kind of ambitious people, and I think we both want things in this world. And I think one of the ways that we've realized that you can definitely get to the things that you want in this world, whether it be like prestige, a good job, like the ability to travel, is by looking at things like at a very rational and truthful level. Which then kind of brings us to Plato's The Republic. So I was supposed to read this book originally in my freshman year of college, but I didn't. I instead went to a study group that I made with a bunch of other students, and we all talked about the things that we like knew about the books that we were reading, instead of actually reading them. And yeah, that was it. We passed our class, but we didn't really gain that foundational knowledge that you were supposed to gain from these books, right? So then in my senior year of college, I took another political philosophy class because you have to take two for a political science degree. I didn't mention, but I did graduate recently with my degree in political science. I have like a small anecdote, but I think I'll save it for another video. Um, yeah, so I recently graduated with my degree in political science, so I do have like a good foundation. But you have to take two political philosophy classes. If only I could wrap this up. Um, and in my second one, I actually read the books, but it was a lot of like the more contemporary ones, like Machiavelli's The Prince and Discourses on Livy, Rousseau's Social Contract, and John Locke's discourses, or not discourses, Second Treatise of Government, right? It was a lot more contemporary, and I was like, well, what did I miss from this class? And then obviously my first thought went to what's the foundation of Western like philosophical canon? It's Plato's The Republic, right? So I should go back and I should read this book and I should see if there's any really good ideas like there were in all of these other books, for my life, right? And unfortunately, I was a little disappointed. Unfortunately, in the ideas that were expressed because they weren't like so foundational, or like revelatory, right? As I think they would have been had I read this book when I was supposed to. Because if I had read this book when I was supposed to, a lot of these ideas I didn't know at the time, but I now do because I've intuitively learned them through life experiences. So to start off, I'm sure you can tell that I'm drawing the cave, but I'm actually going to be mainly talking about a point that comes up a little bit after the allegory of the cave. But if you don't know the allegory of the cave, it's that there are people sitting in this cave, and there's a guy up here with a fire, and he's sitting up here, and he's portraying like shadow puppets on the wall, right? And so the only thing that the people down here know is what's portrayed on the wall, right? That's their whole knowledge base. That's their all of their understanding of the world, right? But if this guy ever decided that he would climb up the hill, he would discover the guy who's been playing tricks on him, and he'd probably beat the hell out of him, right? And if he ever decided, and sorry, not to get ahead of myself. After he beats the hell out of this guy, he has two choices. He can either return to the cave, right, or he can continue further, right? And so this is like the first level of knowledge, right? And so if he returns to the cave, obviously he's just going to sit there in ignorance and sadness. But if he continues, he's eventually going to discover that there's an outside world. And when he discovers this outside world, the sun is going to burn his eyes. That's what Socrates says. And when it burns his eyes, that pain and discomfort is either going to lead him to do two things. He's either going to crawl back into the cave once again to live out his existence in ignorance, or he's going to persist through that pain and build like a house and live happily ever after, right? And so what this gets at is that Socrates, while talking to Glaucon, starts to talk to him about how we see objects, right? And he says, Glaucon, when you use your eyes to look at something, what happens? And Glaucon's like, well, I see it, right? I see the object. And Socrates goes, well, yeah, you do, but I think there's also some kind of confounding variable, like another condition, right? And that's light. You know, you need light to bounce off of your eyes, and you need light to illuminate the object to be able to see the object, right? So light acts as a biconditional force on both of you. And Glaucon's like, yeah, you're right, Socrates. And then Socrates says, I think it's the same for ideas. And that was the bridge too far. He lost everyone there. But then, obviously, of course, because it's Plato's Republic, he brings everyone back. So he goes, you know, when we come to like ideas, especially like rational ideas, I think is implicit in what Socrates is talking about. There is like some kind of biconditional that affects both, that we both need to have in order to discover rational ideas. And what Socrates says is that it's goodness, but he talks about goodness in like the classical sense where it's a virtue. And what he eventually gets around to saying is that it's truth. You both need truth in your own mind and truth about the idea to have it be like rational, like a good idea, right? And so this is where I'm going to veer off of Plato's The Republic, and I'm going to talk about like my own critiques. So what this got me thinking about was the two like main zeitgeists, at least ideologically, of our generation, right? And I'm going to critique both through this lens that Socrates points out, because I think Socrates is right that truth really is like the underpinning of virtue, right? And so when we look at both of our our ideological zeitgeists, that being capitalism and socialism, I think you see that neither subordinate themselves to truth. I think one does more than the other, but I think neither subordinate themselves to truth to have like a truly virtuous society. I don't think this is anything insane. I think a lot of like philosophical thinkers think the same thing. So for capitalism, I think there's two things that truth gets subordinated to, which is competition and influence. And I think for socialism, the two things, I think one of the main things that it gets subordinated to, and not to sound too much like, you know, a red-pilled kind of guy, is feelings, right? Especially feelings of like kindness and sympathy, right? I think almost that kindness and sympathy can have this like negative effect towards truth when it comes to like the socialist zeitgeist, right? So anyway, first I'm going to talk about capitalism. So I think some of the ways that truth gets subordinated to competition and influence is, first of all, when people hide the truth, right? Some people in capitalism will hide the truth, and they'll hide the truth usually for two reasons. The first reason is that if they don't tell you the truth, right, then they can compete better, right? They simply have an edge in the world. They know something about the world that you don't, whether that be just like the ability to efficiently process a document, right? It can be something as simple as that. But because they know that and you don't, they can compete at a higher level. And so they have like a implicit gain from not telling you that truth. I think I have something on my head. I think it's a piece of hair. Hopefully that wasn't too distracting for the entire video. Anyway. So people have an implicit gain from hiding the truth because they can compete better than you. So I think I talked about earlier how me and Jerem both value truth, and we value truth because we think it can. We know, not that we think, but we know that it leads us to good outcomes. Being rational leads to good outcomes. So if somebody, if individual one knows more, right, knows more truths, then they can lead to more good outcomes. Now, I think that the hiding of the truth is not as bad as what we'll get into later with deception, right? Because while not knowing a truth doesn't get you anything good, it also doesn't get you particularly anything bad. Your ignorance of the world doesn't get you something bad, it just doesn't get you something good, right? The only time that this malignancy can lead to negative outcomes is when you have for example, a firm that has a production line, and let's say person one can process documents twice as fast because they know so many truths about whatever program they're using, right? That they get ahead of person 2, 3, and 4. Well, eventually the problem is that person 1 is going to run out of things to do, and usually you're going to run out of things to do while other people still have things to do, and those things that they still need to do are a precept for you getting more stuff done, right? So it can slow down everything. I hope that was kind of clear. I know that was a bad way to state that, but essentially, if somebody's getting too far ahead, eventually there becomes a blockage in their production line, which is tied to the people previous to them, right? And so eventually they will just not be able to get ahead. And that can be solved by, person 1 telling person 2 how to use the program. The problem the reason that usually doesn't happen is because person 1 has an advantage to getting ahead of everyone else, because this person, if this person gets ahead to this point and there's an outside observer, so the manager, right? The manager's going to look at person 1 and be like, wow, person 1's killing it. He's ahead of everything. Amazing. Absolutely incredible. And everybody else is dragging him down. And so this guy looks super virtuous to the manager. So the manager's going to like this person more. At least that's something I've seen, right? I think another reason people hide truths from other people is because they don't want to anger them. And I think this is for two reasons. One, I don't think that human beings I think human beings should seek out conflict. I don't think human beings necessarily want to seek out conflict. I think human beings are very risk averse. And I don't think that's anything too insane, right? And so angering other people is one way to encourage risk into your life. But it also has the side effect of hurting your influence over somebody, right? So if you anger somebody, they're not going to be influenced by you. They're going to resent you. So a lot of truths about this world have very deleterious consequences, right? Meaning that if you tell somebody that they're fat, they're not going to be very happy with you. But it's probably important to tell them that they're fat so that they can go to the gym and work out and lead a healthier and longer life, right? A more fulfilling life. Unfortunately, that's going to make people angry at you. And so you wouldn't want to run an advertisement as a firm saying go to the gym, right? Because people are going to be you're going to have a massive hate campaign on Twitter. You've infuriated everybody who is even 5 pounds overweight, right? Even people it's not even aimed at are going to step in because they have vested interests in other things that will promote their anger or promote them to show anger towards you, right? So sometimes hiding truths from other people can be very beneficial to you because it allows you to continue influencing them. It allows you to minimize risk, right? And so both of these and all of these have the negative consequence of subordinating truth to other things, which eventually don't lead to good outcomes, right? And that's why I think I critique capitalism in this way, is because eventually you have these problems where you don't have good outcomes. Another thing, and this is a more insidious one, is deception. I think there is, and so while God, I should finish a thought. So, uh, deception is a net negative, but I think more people use deception in capitalism than the other way, than just hiding truths, right? And that's because deception can get you a lot further. It can allow you to compete more, because it brings other people down. And while this is more of like a negative in ignorance, this is a negative in promoting like a falsehood as a truth. So the main example that I used last time in a different take of this video was telling somebody that the sky is red, right? And so while the sky being telling somebody that the sky is red, obviously if you can convince somebody to believe that the sky is red, you're a genius. But let's say you do, right? You convince somebody else that the sky is red. Well, if that person is presented with a new piece of information, not only is that falsehood like a net negative for them, because they're going to go around telling people the sky is red and then nobody's going to trust them. They're going to think they're an idiot, right? So that leads to a bad outcome, a negative perception of that person. But if somebody else comes and confronts them about their falsehood, so let's say they say, oh, and they don't even have to confront them directly by saying that the sky is blue. They could say that the sky reflects the color of the ocean, right? That person is never going to believe that the ocean and or that the sky is a reflection of the ocean, because the ocean is blue and the sky is red, right? So not only is it going to lead them to negative outcomes initially, it's going to lead them to further negative outcomes when like an outside observer confronts them with information just adjacent to them that can't be true at the same time as their other beliefs, right? And so eventually they will lead themselves into this like rabbit hole of falsehoods where they just continue to believe falsehood after falsehood, right? And that necessarily just continues to lead to bad outcomes. And the worst part is if you can convince a lot of people in a society, you start to break down that society in a worse way, I think, than just like people getting slowed down, right? This is an actual like bad outcome. So this is a bad outcome, a negative effect. This is just like a malign, like it could be more efficient, right? The third reason I want to, or the third critique I have is the idiot critique, right? And this plays into kind of like a culmination of both of these, like, but internalized. And we'll get to that in the next video, along with my critique of socialism, because I don't think I have enough time in this video. I think I'm at 18 minutes already, so it's probably good to close the video out. I don't want to make it too long. I just wanted to say I really appreciate you sticking in for the video if you did finish it. I hope that both to Jerem and the audience that this was like kind of helpful or enlightening. I think it's a different perspective on the critique of capitalism than I think is normally brought about, which is usually the moral one, while this one I think is more from a like pragmatic or like a practical sense. So I hope that was helpful. I want to say I really appreciate Jerem letting me come on his channel and kind of talk about some of my ideas of Plato's The Republic. And I hope you have a good rest of the day. Stay tuned. Hopefully the second video is out soon. Have a good one.